is the Aquilifer EP 6-24 power first focal plane long-range scope with a 30mm tube and a 50mm objective lens. It has the same bright ED glass as its big brother, the Aquilifer EP 5-25, in a slightly smaller, slightly lighter package with a slightly smaller range of magnification. But does it stand up on its own? Well, hit that like button and we'll test it and find out. Let's skip the boring unboxing videos and just take a look at what you get inside the box. This is the Aquilifer 6-24 power first focal plane long-range tactical scope. It has a 50mm objective lens and a 30mm tube. And in terms of overall fit and finish design, I'd have to say this is not bad for a budget optic. Now, it has an illuminated reticle, and it comes with a 2032 coin battery, and it fits underneath this cap here. And it has 11 levels of brightness, with an off in between the 1 and the 11. And it shares the turret with our parallax focus that goes from infinity all the way down to 10 yards, which makes this a very usable scope for air guns or rimfire. And that does turn a bit stiffly there. And our turrets here, these are locking. You pull up to unlock. And let's take a listen. Audible, tactile positive, with a little bit of slop in between each of the clicks. And each of the clicks, by the way, is a 0.1 MRAD or a 1/10 of a mil, and these are user resettable. You just unscrew that top there with a coin, or it comes with a flathead tool, and you can pop off that turret and set it back down to reset your zero. There isn't a revolution indicator in the turret, though, so for those of you who are shooting PRS, you should be aware of that. And our windage, also audible, tactile positive, with a little bit of slop in between each of the clicks. And our magnification ring turns with a little bit of rubbing. I wouldn't quite call that grit. Now, there's no throw lever. It doesn't come with a throw lever, and there's no little nub on here for extra leverage. It turns fine right now, but I think if you had gloves on, if shooting in the cold or in wet conditions, that might be a little slippery. And our diopter focus turns pretty smooth. Well, a little bit of grit there at the end. And there's a little indicator dot just so to help you remember which position this is in for your particular eye focus. All right, so overall this has some pretty standard features here. Not bad for a budget scope, but of course the important thing is how does it look through the glass. So we'll get this mounted up and we'll test that next. We're looking at the peak of Mount Davidson approximately 1,500 yards away through the EP 6-24 at its lowest power of 6 to give our best overall view through the glass. And there's a little bit of marine haze in the air, so it's a slightly bluish, grayish tint overall, but that is what we're seeing with our naked eye in the real world. Overall image is pretty sharp from edge to edge, with just a little bit of chromatic aberration visible in high contrast areas. Now let's bring this scope up to typically a scope sweet spot about halfway in its magnification range to 12 power, and that is still quite clear and sharp from edge to edge. Now let's bring up our magnification all the way to 24 power. Typically we lose some light, but that is still quite clear and bright. I can easily make out the trail marker sign on the top of the hill there. That's to the right of those hikers. That is about a 3-foot-ish sign on top of a pole, which is a good proxy for an IPSC target at this distance. Now let's take a look at the illumination. As you can see, with a dark, shaded, or cluttered background, it makes seeing your crosshairs a little bit more challenging. But if we turn on the illumination to 11, you can see the center of those crosshairs quite visibly in red. And let's bring up our magnification all the way to 24 power, and you can see all the stadia in those crosshairs quite clearly. We're looking through the Aquilifer EP at its lowest power of 6 at our reference targets down range 100 yards away. And this is a good opportunity to check our range of adjustments, starting with our elevation. And that is the very topmost. And that darkened area at the top there that you're seeing is the eye box, because this scope does have a bit of an unforgiving eye box. And that is the very bottom extent of our range of adjustments. So let's dial this back to 0 on this turret. Now let's check out our windage, and that is the right extent of our range of adjustment. And that is the leftmost extent. And let's dial this back to 0 on the turret. Alright, now let's bring up our magnification halfway in its magnification range to 12 and take a look now. And overall, it's a pretty nice, bright image overall, with just a little bit of chromatic aberration visible in the outer edges. You can see that in high contrast areas like the target frame to the left of our target board. And we are roughly lined up to the bottom left corner of that highlight grid on that grid target on the top right of the board. So let's do a box test. Let's do a complete rotation of our elevation turret. Now a complete rotation of our windage, and now let's bring back the turret back on our elevation and back on our windage to 0, and we're lined up pretty much where we started. Alright, let's do our nipple twister test coined by my buddy Cyclops Joe. I'm gonna just turn the heck out of these turrets for a good 20-30 seconds, and we're going to see if this will go back to its original starting location when I dial these back to 0. So let's start with our elevation and bring that back to 0. And now our windage. And we're pretty much right there. Alright, let's bring up our magnification all the way to its maximum of 24. And we've lost quite a bit of light and a lot of the detail in the backstop entirely, and there is quite a visible purple fringe overall. But I'm surprised at the amount of detail I'm able to see. In terms of clarity, I can easily see the fine lines of the grid target on the top right, and while the overall color has gotten muddier in a brownish tint, the vibrancy that you see in the color card on the top left is actually surprisingly good, though not quite color balanced. And on our paper target in the bottom left, I can easily make out the hits on the reactive sticker target on the center of the paper, but below that you can also make out two 22 caliber holes on the paper target. And on our resolution chart on the bottom right, I can make out both horizontal and vertical lines down to element 3, really element 4 of group -1, which for a budget 24 power scope is surprisingly good. Before we talk about this scope, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and the subscribe button before this video ends. It's absolutely free. And if you're already subscribed to this channel, make sure that bell icon is set for notify all. So thanks for taking a moment to do that right now. And thanks to Discovery Optics for supplying the rings in this review. These are their great 6061 adjustable height rings. That's right, you can adjust the height on this. So this is great if you don't know exactly the height above bore that you'll need for your particular rifle setup. And they're really nicely designed, really rugged, so that you can just run them as your regular scope rings if you want to. So this is a great budget option. I think they got a street price about 50 bucks. And this is a perfect pairing for a budget long-range scope. And by budget, this has a street price of about $250, which roughly makes it about half the price of the equivalent of Vortex Diamondback Tactical scope, which I own, by the way, and I've reviewed that. Great scope, but it doesn't have illumination, where this one does have illumination. And in terms of the glass quality of this Aquilifer scope, excellent. As you saw in my testing, you really can get really good detail. Now, it is a budget scope, and they did have to make some compromises. It has a little bit of a tight eye box overall, but in terms of build quality, very nice. And you saw in my testing, the optical quality of this is just really excellent for the price tier that you're paying for this. Now, which leads to a question. Now, they also make the EP5 to 25 version of this particular scope. So why would you pick this over that one? There is a little bit of a price difference. The 5 to 25 is about $70-ish more, but that isn't that much more. But then again, it's not that much more magnification either, but it does have a larger tube, and that means a larger range of adjustments. So if you're more into looking into more serious competition, you might want to get that scope. If you are just looking for a good all-around scope, this is a great one because it is a smaller scope than the 5 to 25. That means also lighter. So if you are hunting, weight makes a big difference if you're actually trekking your rifle into your blind or your hunting location. So yeah, weight does make a big difference, but you're not sacrificing overall image quality with this particular scope. So if you're interested in learning more about it, or the 5 to 25, which I've also reviewed, by the way, you can find all the links and links to that other review in the video description here. So thanks for taking a look at those links, and thanks for taking the time to watch this video. God bless. Moondog out. What did you think of the video? Leave me a comment, and you can always chat with me on X, Facebook, or Instagram. You can find useful links in the video description, and check out my other videos, channels, and my website, moondogindustries.com.